Hello everyone, I'm Paul and today we're solving problem 838, push dominoes. So this is a medium problem and it might seem complex at first, but here we will go through each case step by step and I will show you how I solved it. So let's start. This is a long description, but basically we are given a string of dominoes and each domino can either fall to the left, fall to the right, or stay still. And we need to return another string representing the final state of all dominoes. This is a great draw to understand this. So for example, this domino is going to fall to the left. So when it falls, the domino that's to the left will also fall to the left. And you can see the same down here in the result. This domino was a dot because it was still initially, but for the final state we need to return an L in that place. This means both of these dominoes will fall to the left because this one fell to the left. So in this example, given this string, we return this state. Now let's see what's happening here. Each domino could either be still, this means it could be a dot, it could be left, or it could be right. And we will take a greedy approach. So whenever we see a dot, we will add 1 to our count, and for every other domino we are storing the last value. Now let's see why. Let's say the current domino is moving left and the last domino that's not still, meaning it's not a dot, is empty. So this means we could have something like this: dot, 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 left. So in this case we want to replace each dot with an L. So this would be the result. Now what happens if the last value that was not a dot was also an L? We'll have something like this, for example, L dot dot L. Well, in this case we will also replace each dot with an L. And if the last value was right, we would have something like this: right dot 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 left. Well, in this case we want to count how many dots do we have here. Remember, we'll have a variable count which will store the last count of dots. So in this case the count is 3, and for this case we need to split count in half and add a right for every item in the first half and a left for every item in the second half. And if the number count is odd, we want to keep the dot in the middle. Okay, this is the most difficult case. Every other case is much easier. Now what happens if the current domino is right and previous is empty? Meaning something like this: dot 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 right. Well, in this case we actually want to keep this like this. We don't have to do anything. Now what happens if the current domino is right and the previous one was also right? Meaning something like this: right dot right. Well, in this case we want to replace every inner dot with a right. And what happens if the current domino is right and the previous one is left? Meaning something like this: left dot dot right. In this case we will also keep it as it is. We won't do anything. So basically we have 6 possible cases, and with this approach we can solve this in time and space complexity of big O of n. So now let's go with the code and hopefully you will get the idea. First we will say last equals an empty string, count equals 0, and result equals an empty string. Remember that last is for the last domino that's not still. And next, for every domino in Dominoes, if D equals a dot, in this case we add 1 to our count. Else, here remember we have 6 possible cases. So if D equals left, here we have 3 possible cases. If the last equals an empty string, result plus equal left times count. And remember, after every one of these 6 cases, we need to add to our result the current domino. We also need to set count to 0, and we need to set the last one to the current domino. Now let's continue with every other case. So else if the last one equals left, in this case we add to our result left times count also. And for the third case, if the domino is left, here we need to say else if the last one is right. First we need to add to our result right times count divided by 2, and similarly we'll say result plus equal left times count divided by 2. And remember, if the count is add, we need to add a dot in the middle. So if count multiplied by 2 equals 1, we add to our result a dot. And now, else if the current domino is right, here we have 3 more possible cases. So if the last one is empty, we add to our result a dot times count. Else if the last one is right, we add to our result right times count. And else if the last one equals left, we add to our result a dot times count. And finally, once we end the loop, if count is greater than 0, meaning if the end of the original string has 1 or more dots, if our variable last equals right, we add to our result right times count. Else, result plus equal a dot times count. And finally we return the result. So this is the entire code, and now we will submit this and see if it works. And as you can see, this works and it's very efficient. So if you found this useful, please drop a like, subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.